I thought my husband's company party would be a celebration of everything we had built together. Instead, it was the night I discovered the cracks in my marriage and the secret that would push me toward revenge I never imagined I'd be capable of. The ballroom shimmered with soft golden light, the kind that makes everything look polished, almost unreal. I had spent the whole week planning my outfit, an emerald green dress that hugged me in all the right places. My hair swept into loose waves, and a simple necklace my husband Ryan had given me last year for my birthday. At 25, I was still figuring myself out. But that night, walking into the grand lobby with Ryan's hand resting on my back, I felt like I belonged in his world of executives, contracts, and polished perfection. Ryan had been working at Weston & Cole for almost 4 years, climbing his way up in ways that had both impressed and concerned me. Impressed because he was ambitious, driven, always chasing the next promotion. Concerned because with each step higher, he seemed to slip further away from me. He worked late nights, answered calls during dinner, and sometimes I felt like I was competing with his job for his attention. Still, I reminded myself that ambition was part of what I loved about him. I told myself this party was proof of his success, proof that the sacrifices we were making were worth it. But something felt off the moment we walked in. Ryan seemed distracted, his eyes scanning the crowd like he was searching for someone. I brushed it off at first, assuming he was just nervous about making a good impression with the higher-ups. He excused himself almost immediately to talk with a group of partners, leaving me by the bar with a glass of champagne. I wasn't used to this crowd. Everyone seemed older, more polished, their conversations filled with industry jargon and references I didn't understand. I smiled politely, nodded along, but mostly I sipped my drink and pretended I wasn't out of place. Then I saw her. She was standing near the corner of the room, laughing at something a tall man in a gray suit had said. She had sleek blonde hair, perfectly styled, and a fitted black dress that looked custom-made. Something about her confidence drew attention. Even I couldn't look away. When Ryan joined her a few minutes later, placing his hand lightly on her arm, my stomach twisted. I told myself not to overreact. Maybe she was just a colleague. Maybe they were discussing work. But as the evening went on, I noticed how often his eyes found her, how his smile was brighter with her than it had been with me in months. By the time dinner was served, I felt invisible. Ryan sat next to her, not me, laughing too loudly at her jokes, leaning in too close. I tried to engage in conversation with the person beside me, but I couldn't stop watching them. Every touch, every glance between them felt like a dagger. And then it happened. The CEO stood to give a speech, the kind of long, self-congratulatory address you expect at these events. As everyone clapped, I glanced around to find Ryan, but he wasn't at the table. Neither was she. My heart pounded. I excused myself and wandered toward the lobby, then down one of the side hallways. That's when I saw them. The secretary, her name was Claire, I later learned, was pressed against the wall, and Ryan was leaning over her, whispering something that made her laugh softly. His hand was on her waist, his face inches from hers. It was the kind of intimacy you can't misinterpret, the kind that tears the floor out from under you. I froze, unable to breathe, the champagne glass trembling in my hand. For a moment, I thought maybe I was imagining it, maybe it wasn't what it looked like. But then he kissed her. Right there, in the hallway where anyone could have seen. My husband kissed his secretary while I stood just around the corner, my heart breaking with every second. I stumbled back before they could see me, my vision blurry with tears. My chest felt tight like I couldn't get enough air. I wanted to scream, to storm in and demand answers, but instead I fled. I grabbed my coat, ignored the stares of guests as I rushed past, and hailed a cab home. That night, I sat on our bed with the necklace he had given me burning against my skin. My mind replayed the scene again and again, torturing me with every detail. The way his hand rested on her waist. The way his lips curved into a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in months. The ease with which he betrayed me. When Ryan came home hours later, smelling faintly of her perfume, I pretended to be asleep. My fists clenched under the blanket as he climbed into bed beside me, oblivious to the storm raging inside me. In the morning, I confronted him. My voice shook, but my anger gave me strength. "I saw you last night," I said. With her. For a moment, his mask slipped. His eyes widened and guilt flickered across his face. But then he recovered, shaking his head. "You're imagining things, Stella. She's just a colleague. We were talking about a project." "Don't lie to me," I snapped. "I saw you kiss her." He stiffened, then laughed bitterly. "You're paranoid. Do you have any idea how crazy you sound?" Gaslighting. That's what it was, and I knew it. Still, his words cut deep. For a moment, I doubted myself, doubted what I had seen with my own eyes. But the memory of that kiss was too vivid to deny. The days that followed were unbearable. Ryan acted like nothing had happened, but I couldn't unsee the betrayal. Every time he checked his phone, every time he worked late, I wondered if he was with her. The trust that had held our marriage together was gone, shattered beyond repair. I started watching him more closely, looking for signs, for proof. I checked his phone when he showered, finding late-night messages from C, though most had been deleted. I followed him once after work, my hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly they ached. He drove not to the gym, as he claimed, but to a small cafe on the other side of town. And there she was, waiting for him with a smile that made my stomach twist. They sat close, laughing, her hand brushing against his like they were teenagers in love. I watched from the car, tears streaming down my face until I couldn't take it anymore. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I sat at our kitchen table with a notebook, writing everything down, the dates, the times, the places. I documented everything, building a record of his betrayal, because somewhere deep inside, I knew I wasn't going to let this destroy me. Ryan thought I was naive, that I would look the other way, that I would let him walk all over me. But he didn't know me as well as he thought. He didn't know that betrayal has a way of forging strength out of heartbreak. And he was about to learn that when you break a woman who has given you everything, sometimes she rebuilds herself stronger than you could ever imagine. The day after I followed Ryan to that cafe, something in me shifted. For weeks I had been drowning in heartbreak, gaslit by his lies, torn apart by doubts. But watching him sit there with Claire, looking happier in her company than he had looked with me in months, stripped away every illusion. He wasn't just making a mistake. He was choosing her, choosing betrayal, choosing to risk everything we had for something cheap and shallow. That realization hurt more than I can put into words, but it also gave me clarity. I couldn't keep living in limbo, waiting for scraps of affection or lies dressed up as explanations. If Ryan wanted to treat me like a fool, fine, but I wouldn't stay one. That night, while he sat in his office on his laptop, pretending to work, I opened my notebook again and added more details. Time, location, license plate of Claire's car. Slowly, I was turning my heartbreak into a record, something undeniable. I started small. I downloaded an app that backed up phone photos automatically to my private cloud. Each time I caught a glimpse of their texts, I snapped pictures. Sometimes it was just a timestamp and a "can't wait." Sometimes it was an emoji with more meaning than words. Once it was a full message from her. "Last night was incredible. Wish we could have more time." My chest tightened when I saw that, but instead of collapsing, I wrote it down. Documentation. Proof. Ryan didn't notice at first. He was too wrapped up in his double life, too confident in his ability to deceive me. But I noticed everything. The way he dressed sharper when he claimed he was working late. The new cologne he started wearing. The sudden need to take calls in private. I confided in no one. Not yet. I wanted to scream it to my friends, to my family, but I knew they'd either pity me or push me toward decisions I wasn't ready to make. This wasn't just about leaving Ryan. It was about taking back control, about making him pay for every sleepless night, every tear, every moment of humiliation. So I kept playing the part. I smiled at dinner, asked about his work, kissed his cheek when he left. And every time he thought he was fooling me, I was collecting one more piece of ammunition. The first real turning point came 2 weeks later. Ryan left his laptop open one night, probably too drunk from drinks with colleagues to remember to close it. My heart pounded as I sat down, hands trembling, but I forced myself to look. And there it was, an email thread between him and Claire. "I can't stop thinking about you," she had written. "Last night was worth the risk," his reply. "Soon we won't have to sneak around. Just be patient, I nearly dropped the laptop. Soon we won't have to sneak around." Did that mean he was planning to leave me? Or worse, did it mean he was plotting to push me out quietly, take everything and play house with her instead? I copied the emails, forwarding them to a secret account I had created. Then I sat back staring at the screen with tears running down my face. The betrayal was no longer just an affair, it was a plan. The next morning, Ryan acted like nothing was wrong. He kissed my forehead, told me he'd be working late, and left me standing in the kitchen with coffee growing cold in my hands. I almost laughed. Did he really think I was blind? Did he think my love made me stupid? That was the day I decided this wouldn't just be about exposing him. It would be about outsmarting him, beating him at his own game. I started researching divorce laws in our state. I learned how adultery could impact settlements, how proof of infidelity could swing decisions on property, alimony, even reputational damage. I made notes on everything, highlighting key points. I realized that if I gathered enough undeniable evidence, I could not only walk away, but walk away with power. But revenge wasn't just about the legal system. No, I wanted Ryan to feel what I had felt. The sting of betrayal, the humiliation of being underestimated. So I began weaving my plan quietly, carefully. The next time Ryan had a late night, I drove to his office building. I parked across the street and watched as he and Claire slipped out the back door together, laughing, arms brushing. I snapped photos with my phone, zooming in to capture the truth. Another night I followed them to a hotel. My chest tightened as I saw him place his hand on the small of her back, guiding her inside like he used to guide me. But I didn't cry. I raised my camera and clicked. Each picture was a stab to the heart, but also a weapon in my arsenal. Weeks passed like this. By day, I was the dutiful wife, still smiling at family dinners and work events. By night, I was the quiet hunter, documenting every move, saving every file, building a fortress of evidence. And then came the company gala. I hadn't wanted to go. The memory of the last party still burned. The image of him kissing her in the hallway etched into my mind. But Ryan insisted, saying, "It'll look suspicious if you don't come. Everyone expects you there," so I went. I wore a crimson dress this time, bold and defiant. When we arrived, I noticed the stares, the way colleagues looked at us, then at Claire, then back at me. Whispers followed me like shadows, and I knew, they knew. Maybe not everything, but enough to wonder. Ryan acted like everything was perfect. He kept his hand on my waist, introduced me to partners, laughed at jokes. But I watched the way his eyes darted to Claire across the room, the way she lingered near the bar, her smile sharp and triumphant. Halfway through the evening, I slipped away. My heart pounded as I climbed the stairs to the mezzanine level, where I knew I could get a clear view of the ballroom below. And there it was, the moment I had anticipated. Ryan excused himself from a group, walked straight to Claire, and together they disappeared down a side hallway. I followed. Careful, quiet, my phone camera ready. This time, when I caught them, I didn't hide. I stepped forward, snapping photo after photo as Ryan's eyes went wide with shock. Claire gasped, pulling away, her face pale. "Smile," I said coldly. "You'll want to remember this moment," Ryan stammered, reaching for me. "Stella, it's not what it looks like," I laughed, the sound sharp. "Save it. I've got everything I need." I turned and walked away, my heels clicking against the marble floor like a drumbeat of finality. Behind me, I heard Ryan calling my name, but I didn't stop. For the first time in months, I felt powerful. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a hotel room under a different name, spread out all the evidence I had collected across the bed, and stared at it. Photos, texts, emails, recordings. It was a mountain of betrayal. And it was mine to use. As I drifted to sleep, one thought kept circling in my mind. Ryan thought he was clever, thought he could play me for a fool. But he was about to learn that the girl he underestimated was smarter, stronger, and far more dangerous than he ever imagined, because I wasn't just his wife anymore. I was his reckoning. The morning after the gala confrontation, I woke up feeling different. For months, I'd been carrying around this invisible weight, this shame that wasn't mine to carry. But now, with photos in my hand and months of documentation safely tucked away, the shame wasn't mine anymore. It belonged to Ryan, it belonged to Claire. And for the first time, I felt like I was finally holding the cards. I checked my phone, dozens of missed calls and texts from Ryan. Some angry, some desperate. "Where are you?" "Stella, please come home. We need to talk." And then the threats. "If you walk away now, don't think you'll get a dime. You'll regret this if you make it public." The messages only solidified my resolve. He was scared. Good. I ignored them all and spent the morning meeting with a divorce attorney, Claire. The good kind, not the snake Ryan had in his pocket. Her name was Valerie, and she listened patiently as I laid everything out. Every detail, every photo, every text. When I finished, she leaned back in her chair, her expression unreadable. "Stella," she said slowly, "you have him. Dead to rights. This isn't just adultery. This is a pattern of deception, lies, and public humiliation. Courts don't look kindly on that, especially when you have clear, indisputable proof. You could walk away with more than just half. You could walk away with everything that matters." Her words settled over me like armor. For so long, I had been terrified of losing. Losing him, losing the life we'd built, losing the image of who I thought we were. But now the idea of winning, of taking back power, lit a fire inside me. We mapped out the first steps. File the petition quietly. Serve him without warning. Freeze certain accounts before he had a chance to move funds. Valerie assured me that with the evidence I had, the judge would likely fast-track hearings. "And don't worry," she added with a small smile. "Men like Ryan think they're invincible. That arrogance always works against them." That afternoon, I drove back to the estate. Ryan was waiting on the front steps, pacing like a caged animal. The moment I stepped out of the car, he rushed toward me. "Stella, listen to me." "No!" I cut him off, my voice sharp. "You listen. I'm done playing the fool, Ryan. I know everything. The late nights, the hotel rooms, the emails. Don't you dare insult me with lies anymore." His face darkened. "You've been spying on me?" I almost laughed. "Spying?" "No. Observing. Collecting. And now I have everything I need." His jaw clenched, but I saw the flicker of fear in his eyes. He tried to regain control, stepping closer, lowering his voice. "Stella, don't do this. Think about what we have. Our house, our reputation, our future." I held up my phone, the screen glowing with one of his incriminating texts. "What we had died the night you kissed her at the company party." "The future you're talking about?" "That's with her, not me. So don't stand here and pretend." For once, Ryan had no words. He just stood there, fists clenched, watching me walk past him into the house that no longer felt like home. The next days blurred into a whirlwind of preparation. Valerie filed the papers, and Ryan was served at his office. I almost wished I could have seen his face when the envelope landed in his hands. I heard later that he erupted in front of half the staff, cursing, shouting, demanding to know who had betrayed him. Everyone knew, of course. His secret wasn't a secret anymore. And then the fallout began. First came the whispers. Colleagues who once admired him now exchanged knowing looks. Clients who once trusted him suddenly hesitated. Claire tried to keep up appearances, but even she couldn't hide from the stares. The affair that had felt thrilling behind closed doors was now public knowledge, messy and humiliating, but I wasn't done. No, I wanted more than whispers. I wanted him stripped bare, just like he had left me. I reached out to a journalist friend I trusted, someone who had covered corporate scandals before. I didn't give her everything, just enough to pique interest. A high-ranking executive caught in an affair with his secretary, photos to prove it, texts that hinted at misuse of company time and resources. She ran with it, and within a week, an article appeared online. Weston and Cole rising star caught in scandalous affair. The article didn't name me, but everyone in Ryan's orbit knew exactly who I was. The comments section lit up with speculation, judgment, and mockery. Ryan's carefully cultivated image as the golden boy of the firm shattered overnight. When he called me that evening, his voice was raw with rage. "How dare you? Do you know what you've done to me?" I held the phone steady. "I only told the truth, Ryan. You did the rest yourself." He growled something unintelligible and hung up. I set the phone down, my hand steady, my heart pounding with something that felt almost like exhilaration. But revenge wasn't just about ruining him publicly. It was about reclaiming myself. I started making changes, small but powerful ones. I closed our joint accounts, moved my share into my own name. I hired movers to pack up my things, leaving Ryan with nothing but empty closets and silence. I changed my number, blocked him from every platform, and then I focused on myself. I went back to painting, something I hadn't done in years because Ryan always said it was a waste of time. I reconnected with old friends, people I had let drift away because he demanded my attention. I joined a yoga studio, started running in the mornings, filled my days with things that made me feel alive again. Meanwhile, Ryan was unraveling. Valerie kept me updated, missed deadlines at work, confrontations with colleagues, even rumors of Claire distancing herself. The fantasy he had chosen over me was crumbling, just like his career. One night, I heard from a mutual acquaintance that Ryan had shown up drunk at a company function, slurring his words, begging the CEO for another chance. The CEO had pulled him aside, whispered something sharp, and by the next morning, Ryan's name was missing from the company website. He had been quietly let go. When I heard, I felt a rush of conflicting emotions. Part of me grieved for the man I once loved, for the life I thought we'd share. But another part of me, the part that had been forged in betrayal, felt justice. He had taken me for granted. He had betrayed me. And now he was paying the price. The divorce proceedings moved quickly. With the evidence stacked against him, Ryan had little leverage. The judge awarded me the house, a significant portion of the savings and spousal support. Ryan was left with debts, a ruined reputation, and a secretary who, from what I heard, was already looking for her next opportunity. On the day the divorce was finalized, I walked out of the courthouse with Valerie by my side, the sun warm on my face. I felt lighter than I had in years, as though chains had fallen away. Ryan glared at me from across the steps, his face pale, his eyes bloodshot. But he didn't say a word. He couldn't. The power he once wielded over me was gone, and I realized something important. Revenge hadn't destroyed me. It had rebuilt me. Piece by piece, I had taken back my life, my dignity, my strength. That night, I stood in the kitchen of my house, my house, and poured myself a glass of wine. I raised it toward the empty room and whispered, "To me, to the woman you thought was weak, but who turned out stronger than you ever imagined." I smiled then, a real smile, one that came from deep inside. Because I knew the best revenge wasn't just ruining Ryan. The best revenge was living a life he could never touch again. The day my divorce was finalized, I thought that would be the end of my story with Ryan. I thought the judge's ruling, the house in my name, and his shattered career would close the book. But life doesn't end so neatly. Not when you've loved and lost and burned as deeply as I had. What came afterward wasn't just about ending something, it was about building again, piece by piece, from the ashes of betrayal. The first weeks after the divorce were strange. My house felt too big, too quiet. For years it had been filled with Ryan's presence. His clothes tossed on chairs, his voice booming from the hallway, his cologne lingering in the air. Now it was just me. At first, the silence pressed down on me, making me feel small, lost. But over time, that silence transformed into something else. Freedom. No more lies. No more gaslighting. No more wondering if my husband's late night was really just another excuse. I started reclaiming my home as if I were reclaiming myself. I painted the bedroom walls a soft lavender, covering over the sterile beige Ryan had insisted on. I replaced the leather couch he loved with a soft gray sectional where I could curl up with books and blankets. In the kitchen, I hung my grandmother's old copper pans, filling the space with warmth and history. Every change was like peeling away another layer of him, leaving behind only me. But healing wasn't just about paint and furniture. It was about facing the pieces of myself I had buried. For so long, I had made myself smaller to fit Ryan's world. I gave up hobbies, ignored friendships, even silenced my own opinions just to keep peace. Now, with him gone, I asked myself, who is Stella when no one is telling her who to be? The answer came slowly. I picked up my brushes again, painting late into the night until my hands were smudged with color. I joined a running club, rediscovering the thrill of pushing my body forward, the wind in my hair, the burn in my lungs. I reconnected with old friends, meeting them for coffee, laughter spilling out as though no time had passed. For the first time in years, I felt alive, not because of someone else, but because of me. Ryan, meanwhile, was unraveling. I didn't go looking for updates, but word traveled. Friends of friends whispered that he had been blacklisted in the industry. No firm wanted to touch him after the scandal. Claire, his shining secretary, had left him within weeks of the article going viral. Apparently, she had found another executive to latch onto, leaving Ryan alone, bitter, and broke. At first, I thought knowing his life was collapsing would bring me joy. But instead, it brought me clarity. I didn't need to dance on his ruins. My victory was not in his downfall, but in my freedom. Still, I won't lie. When I passed him once in the grocery store, his shoulders hunched, his hair unkempt, his cart filled with instant noodles and cheap beer, I felt a deep satisfaction. He caught my eye and quickly looked away. That small act, that avoidance, told me everything. He knew I had won. And yet, there were nights when loneliness crept in. When I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, wondering how I had gone from a wide-eyed newlywed to a divorced woman at 25. I questioned myself. Had I missed warning signs? Could I have saved us? Was I somehow to blame? Those thoughts clawed at me, but then I'd remember the hallway kiss, the hotel meetings, the lies dripping from his lips. And I'd whisper to myself, no, you didn't break this. He did. The turning point came when I decided to use my pain for something bigger. I started writing, at first in a private journal, then on a blog. I shared my story not with names but with raw honesty. I wrote about betrayal, about the gaslighting, about finding strength in the ashes. To my surprise, people read it. They commented, emailed, even shared their own stories. Women, men, people of all ages wrote to me, "This happened to me too. Your words gave me courage to leave. I thought I was alone until I read this. The more I wrote, the lighter I felt. My pain became a bridge, connecting me to others who had walked through fire. And in their words, I found healing. One day, an email came from a women's center downtown. They had read my blog and wanted me to speak at a support group for women leaving toxic relationships. My first instinct was fear. Me stand in front of strangers, talk about my shame. But then I realized it wasn't shame anymore. It was survival. It was power. That night, I stood in a circle of women, my voice trembling at first but growing stronger as I told my story. When I finished, there was silence and then applause, hugs, tears. One woman whispered, "You gave me the strength to file today." In that moment, I realized my revenge had transformed. It wasn't just about Ryan anymore. It was about helping others break free, too. Months passed. Seasons changed. I built a life that was mine, fully mine. I traveled to Italy with a friend, standing under the Tuscan sun with a glass of wine in hand, laughing until my sides hurt. I took a pottery class, my fingers shaping clay into bowls that were crooked but beautiful. I hosted dinner parties in my lavender-painted dining room, filling the house with warmth and joy. And slowly, I began to think about love again. Not the desperate, all-consuming kind I had with Ryan, but something gentler, healthier. I wasn't in a rush. I knew I was whole on my own. But I also knew that one day, I'd meet someone who saw me. Not as a trophy, not as someone to control, but as Stella. The last time I heard about Ryan was almost a year after the divorce. He had moved out of state, chasing some distant opportunity. But the scandal had followed him. Employers Googled his name and found the articles, the whispers, the downfall. His reputation was a stain he couldn't wash away. He had become a cautionary tale in corporate circles, the man who lost everything to arrogance and betrayal. I didn't smile when I heard it. I didn't gloat. I simply closed my laptop and went back to painting, the sunlight streaming through my window. Because his story wasn't mine anymore. My story was one of freedom, resilience, and rebirth. One evening, as I stood in my rose garden with a glass of wine, watching the sun dip below the horizon, I realized something important. Revenge hadn't been about destroying Ryan. It had been about finding myself. About proving that I was stronger than the lies, stronger than the heartbreak, stronger than the man who thought he could break me. I whispered to the fading light, "I'm not the woman who begged for love anymore. I'm the woman who rose from betrayal." And in that moment, I knew my story wasn't about Ryan at all. It was about Stella. The woman who refused to be erased. The woman who turned betrayal into power. The woman who built a life so full, so radiant, that no amount of lies could ever touch it again.